Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar about the hidden benefits of help desk outsourcing and an Auxis Center of Excellence Spotlight. My name is Fabiana, and I am the Marketing Director at Auxis, and I will be facilitating the traffic of your questions today. But the bulk of the discussion is going to be covered by Adriana, Jose, and Alvaro. Adriana will be facilitating the panel and introducing our other speakers. Adri is one of our senior managers in the business development team, specifically focused on our IT services, including help desk. So I have the pleasure of introducing her to you. And before we get started, just as a quick reminder, your lines are muted. So if you have any questions, you can submit them through the question panel or also through the chat. We're going to make sure to address them as we go through the discussion or at the end. And yeah, we look forward to your participation and your active questions and interactions. So thank you, Adri, and welcome everyone.
Thank you, Fabi, and thank you everyone for joining us today in this webinar. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce the team, but also introduce a little bit Auxis. I'm not sure, for those of you who are not familiar with us, we're a consulting and outsourcing company that we've been specializing throughout the years and working with different companies in optimizing various areas of their back office. We've been in business 25 years this year, and we're a US-based company headquartered in Florida, but our two main delivery centers are in Colombia and Costa Rica. So we really deliver our services from our nearshore platform. Now, I want to introduce both Alvaro and Jose. Alvaro is one of the co-founders of Auxis and also the senior managing director of all of our technology services. He has played a very big role in establishing all of our IT services and our outsourcing operations. And in the past couple of years, he's transitioned more into business development role and working very closely with executives and companies in developing the right roadmaps and solutions to enable their companies to scale. So I think he'll bring a lot of value to the discussion. Also with us is Jose Alvarez. He's the head of our IT managed services practice here at Auxis, and he brings a lot of experience. He's worked in the past in the industries at companies like AT&T, Siemens, and Citibank. And also he's been working with Auxis for the past 15 years with a wide range of different clients and scenarios, from divestitures, transformations, and of course the day-to-day operations and outsourcing. So I also think that he's going to bring a lot of value, and I'm excited to have them here to talk about the Center of Excellence and also some of the benefits that outsourcing can bring to your organization. So before we get started, I wanted to cover some of the things that we were going to talk about today. Of course, we'll get started with some of the challenges that we've been seeing in talking to different organizations and different executives that companies are facing in their help desk organizations. Also, what are some of those characteristics that a good or a high-performing service desk should have? And also, what are some of the benefits that outsourcing this function can bring to your organization? We'll then get into a little bit of the different models of traditional in-house help desk versus a modern or perhaps outsourced help desk. And we'll do a spotlight and highlight of the Auxis Center of Excellence and some of their key functions and how do they play in the day-to-day operations. And finally, we'll sort of put everything into perspective and walk through a couple of case studies and real-world examples so that we can really see how this is playing a big role in it. So just to get kick-started, we're speaking to customers every day, right? And it's clear that it's becoming increasingly more difficult to deliver high-quality service, but it's also a lot more important. There are a lot of operational challenges that happen every day, but there's also a lot of macro challenges that are happening that seem to be affecting every single company that we're speaking with. We're all familiar with the big buzzword of digital transformation, but we're also very familiar of how this has become pretty widespread across all of the organizations, and the heavy dependency on technology is playing a big role. Every single person in every organization is now dependent on multiple systems and multiple technologies to be able to perform their work. So this is putting a lot of pressure and strain on help desk organizations and services teams to be able to provide support to all of these different technologies and systems. Now, we all know the pandemic happened, and the work from home, work from anywhere, anytime sort of mentality is now the new normal, right? This is also putting a lot of stress, because now all of a sudden service desk organizations are having to support maybe users that are anywhere in the world, different coverage hours that they were used to. So it's a big change in the behavior of the users of organizations. Then I think the hardest topic is the attraction and retention of talent, right? Every single person that we're talking to these days is having an issue with this. We all know about the phenomenon that they're calling the Big Resignation that started in 2021, and that is causing a lot of strains in all organizations. Just in the help desk, in the Americas, in help desk organizations, we're seeing that there's over 40% turnover, okay? Not only that, but salaries are going significantly up, which is causing a lot of challenges to not only maintain a team that is constant, that is providing service, but also finding more talent if the companies are growing, and even maintaining those IT budgets that a lot of the times are strained with significantly higher salaries. So all of these things are playing huge roles in how important and how effective can I continue to run my organization. And with all of these things, we have started to see a shift in the behavior of a lot of executives and companies, of people that they're starting to look at outsourcing more as a potential solution to these issues. And they're also realizing that outsourcing doesn't necessarily have to be offshore, but that there's also nearshore options, right? Like Colombia, Costa Rica, that are much more closer to home, and that they can also drive and bring similar values to the organization and benefits. So I think it's very interesting for the conversation today. All of these things sort of put it into perspective, and of the importance of having this good organization to support your users, because it's key to continuing your operations, right? Now, when we think of, okay, yes, I need to have a good service desk organization. It needs to be what we call a high-performing organization, okay? There are a lot of characteristics that a high-performing service desk organization needs to have. I mean, first of all, we want to become more process-dependent than people-dependent, right? You want to reduce that dependency on people that have a lot of knowledge in their minds. You want to have more robust knowledge base. You want to have very good performance metrics and reporting. So Alvaro, why don't we talk a little bit about, when you're speaking to customers, what do you think this high performance service desk means to them, and what value do you think this can bring to their organizations?
Sure, thanks, Adri. And yeah, I mean, I think, as you mentioned, things have changed significantly in the landscape on the help desk side. I mean, the services are still obviously the same, as far as obviously providing the best possible service at the best possible cost. I mean, that is obviously a key driver from having a good performing service desk. But today, with the changes that we're seeing as far as the shortage of talent and so on, I think having a high performance service desk these days, it means that you're able to retain the knowledge that you really have in the organization. So new people that come into those type of operations can really pick up the knowledge that was left behind. So it's so having, you know, a very good or a robust, as we call it, knowledge base, I think is one of the key attributes We see day in and day out when we go into customers or prospects that are talking to or looking, considering outsourcing. We see that there's very little documentation. Typically, the help desk is very reactive in many ways. The agents are there really to do basically your break and fix. So they don't really have a robust knowledge base. The other things that we see a lot is the lack of structured processes and metrics to really understand where the real work is. So having a high performance, any organization in general, you really want to have metrics, right? Numbers don't lie, that type of thing, and really seeing the kind of trends that you're dealing with, where you're getting the biggest, the most requests, the most need for the agents to be dealing with, and so having that understanding is key, and being very more proactive. So the whole idea, we always, I'm sure everyone here is in IT, always have dealing with this reactive versus proactive world, and the help desk tend to be more reactive in many ways, but the metrics really help of preparing the organization to provide obviously a much better service. And last but not least is automation. Obviously, with the number of less resources and more demands on the help desk, it's very important to really focus on automating as many things as you can possibly can, and we're seeing that through technologies like the self-help, the self-service services that most of the ITSM tools bring, or some organizations develop their own self-service tools, and then having some automation or quite a bit of automation in the service management tool that you may have to enable different processes like the onboarding of employees or the provisioners or certain items in the organization, in the environment. So those are things that really help, and having the end user really provide interface with those type of technologies and get more used to that. So I think that's definitely a thing that we see on the high performing service desk that can really bring quite a bit of value to our customers.
Yeah, no, and I think I definitely agree. And piggybacking on something that you said earlier about what are some of the drivers that companies sometimes have, typically we see that cost is one of those drivers, right? But we've also seen that mentality has also started to shift, right? Now it's not only cost savings, a big driver for going outsourcing, but there's also this huge list of benefits that you can get from outsourcing that are most of the times what companies are starting to look for, right? It's not just only saving 10, 20, 30%, but I also want to be able to get improvement of my service, or even consistency on the service that is being provided. I want someone maybe to manage my resources and the recruiting, right? And so I don't have to deal with that. Improvement of best practices, the knowledge base, and all of that, right? So why don't you, Alvaro, talk a little bit again on what are some of these benefits that that they're getting, and what seem to be the most important to them aside from the traditional cost savings?
Yeah, I mean, you touch on some of those, and I think in general, what our customers really look for is for us to really deal with those type of things that is not going to distract them from adding more value to their own business. So the help desk is always looked into organizations where they're not in that business. They're not in the business of running a really great help desk, right? We are in that business. So we obviously bring quite a bit of things to make sure it is as effective as possible. You mentioned, and I think we talked about it a little bit on the knowledge base, and having, I mean, when you think of having a knowledge base on a traditional help desk operation, and you have agents that are perhaps they're maybe documenting the resolution of their tickets, but they're not really, documenting the processes. They're not documenting the articles that they want to share with their users, so the users can actually self drive those solutions, for example, and they don't really have the documentation expertise, if you will, to be able to deliver that type of capability to the organization. So when you look into the type of things that as a great benefit is really having a very strong again, knowledge base, having very structured processes, and having metrics that can measure really the operation effectively.
Yeah, good. Now, Jose, one of the things that we have here is the potential from getting additional access to a different talent pool, right? We know that there's a huge labor shortage in the US. We are located in nearshore destinations such as Colombia and Costa Rica. What are some of the benefits that a company or an organization can get from going perhaps to a nearshore provider rather than staying within the US?
Definitely. So staying in the US, you're competing with talent, and we're having those issues of people quitting, leaving their jobs. And it's very hard for companies to maintain them if they're not an IT organization like we are. Having near shore has a lot of benefit. First, proximity, same time zone. There is some, I mean, those are big benefits that you get with near shore compared to real offshore. Now, the talent pool that we look into those countries, like you mentioned, are resources that are specialized, that have the experience, that have been working on this for years, and we train them also just to get better. So the talent that we get in these countries are as good or better than what we get in the US, just because they're specialized on that particular type of service. So we take advantage of that, and that's how we provide the services to our clients.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's definitely something key, right? You wanna try to venture out where everyone is looking. If everyone is looking in the US, you don't want to go look in the same place, because then all of a sudden it becomes very complicated. So with this, why don't we go into our first polling question? And Fabi, if you don't mind helping us here, what are some of the not so obvious benefits that you would perhaps look for when outsourcing your help desk? I think we touched up on some of them, but.
Thank you, Adri. So make sure to select more than one option if multiple options apply to you. And we're gonna share the results in a couple of seconds once we have captured more responses. Increase customer satisfaction, improve service consistency, access to best practices, better reporting and performance management, and delegate resource management. So we're getting a couple of more. All right, Adri, so I'm going to share the results now. They're actually very interesting because the number one, which is the one related to talent and resource management, came at 71%, followed by access to best practices and increased customer satisfaction at 57%. And then the next one is reporting and service consistency with 43%.
Yeah, this is very interesting. And maybe I'm going to say that I'm actually not surprised that the resource management one came the highest, because it's definitely a very hot topic and a very big thing these days, from what we've been hearing. So I think this is definitely a big benefit that companies are getting, that maybe it's not the one that is spelled out in the billboard everywhere from when you think outsourcing, right?
Yeah, again, I mean, if you think about giving that management to a different organization, that frees up the folks that have been dealing with those type of headaches, if you will, to focus on real value opportunities for the business, which is where I think where most IT professionals really want to spend their time, especially management resources. So I think that makes great sense. And then as far as access to best practices, absolutely. I mean, sometimes is really not, and I think that's a big difference when we compare one outsourcer A versus outsourcer B, is really look at how they're actually using those best practices. What are they doing? Everybody says they have best practices, but the real truth is when you actually get into specifics and how they're applying those best practices and how they really would benefit your organization in particular. So I think those two, the top two there, they're pretty good, make good sense. And I think there's a lot to it, but absolutely, I think you know, handing off the headache to someone else, it's a good driver for sure.
Yeah, let someone else do what they do best, right? While you do what you do best.
Yeah.
Now, so getting now into a different topic, right? Well, it's similar to, but it's a little bit different. Most of organizations that we speak to are running their help desk in-house, right? What we call traditional help desk. A traditional help desk is typically a group of agents or a group of IT practitioners that are supporting the agents and are also doing multiple other things, right? When we think of a more modern service desk organization, is what we see here, where you start including some self-service functionality, some automation, but then you also start having some of these supporting functions to be able to standardize, streamline, right? And have consistency in the service that you're providing your users. So this is something that is very challenging, or we see that is very challenging for organizations to achieve internally, going from a more traditional model to a more modern model. So why do you think this is, Alvaro? Why do you think it's so challenging for an organization to keep it in-house while transforming from a traditional modern model to a more modern help desk organization?
Yeah, I mean, obviously one is the challenge there is costly, right? It's costly to have, let's say, a small team of help desk resources that they're trying to do for the best possible cost. Let's say just have your agents and a supervisor, depending on the size of your help desk. Most of the help desks that we're dealing with, let's say they have 15, 20 people, and then they would have a couple of a management layer and then your agents, and that has a cost. I mean, if you bring the different practices that we have here, like having your automation and having much better tools, and having a training program that is consistently across, that is being deployed consistently to the agents on a regular basis, so keep them up to date, and having even the ability to generate metrics and analyze all that information. That all that workload is put into typically on the management team that is handling help desk. It's a lot of tasks on top of managing the resources, having to build all these type of capabilities. So when you right size the organization to something like dealing with obviously more agents, more users, more there's an economies of scale benefit that most of the outsourcers we take advantage of, and then we bring this type of capabilities, as you see on as we call the center of excellence, at a cost that will is not going to impact so much a single threaded organization that may have all these type of services. So I think that one of the difficulty for sure is first adding so much cost to actually deliver these capabilities, and that's one thing that obviously the outsourcing model really helped with.
And then also perhaps something like the expertise of the resources, right? Because you don't necessarily have people in-house that are experts in workforce management, or that are experts in best practices or implementing automation. So that can also bring a challenge into trying to implement these things, right? Having access to the right talent that can do both, that can do the day-to-day, but that can also play a little bit of a support function. It's also challenging, right?
Yeah. Another one that I don't know if we it's embedded into the knowledge, but into some of the training is the quality assurance, right? Is making sure that the services are really delivering consistently and well, because when you outsource it to a third party, obviously you need to make sure that the services are at as the highest possible quality that you can afford, right? And your service levels are being met on a regular basis. But for that, you really need to have, for example, not only the matrix, but also have a quality assurance program that can ensure that those type of services are being delivered in a consistent way, and the agents have the proper training at all times. They are well up to speed with the type of operating procedures that are in place, because these operating procedures, for example, constantly are changing. That's where you kind of need to have the organization that can update those procedures, and then have the training platform that you can deliver the updates of those procedures to the agents. And then you have your QA to make sure that they really are doing what they're supposed to. So there's quite a bit of things there that are important to really deliver a good service. And again, if you have it just for one single organization, having all these type of services, it's quite expensive to do that. No?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's why we think of this sort of like a hidden and not so obvious benefit of going into outsourcing, because I don't think that this is the first thing that pops to mind to a lot of organizations when thinking of outsourcing, right? We talked about cost savings, we talked about improving of the service consistency, resource management, but then there's all of these functions that are very important in maintaining a high quality services, right? Now let's dive deeper. So Alvaro has touched upon some of these items already, but at Auxis, over the years, we've developed what we call the Center of Excellence, and it's a group of different functions that are supporting our customers, right, and driving additional value to their operations and their organizations without necessarily being 100% dedicated to them. And like Alvaro mentioned, putting such a big cost burden on those organizations. So since Jose is managing this entire organization and the operation, why don't you go a little bit into some of these components, Jose, of the Center of Excellence, and how are some of these playing a day-to-day role in the operations of a customer?
Definitely, thank you. So yeah, the Center of Excellence is key for operations, and at the end, it translates into end user satisfaction. Just because these teams are supporting our day-to-day operations, agents, leads, supervisors cannot just focus on do this type of functions, as we have separate teams that take these functions and work on top of the rest of the team to make sure that the services have the right quality, and as I said, increase that customer satisfaction. Starting with innovation, we believe in efficiencies, we believe in automation, we believe in new things, we implement in new tools, for example, voice recognition for authentication when a user calls. But that is difficult to do if I'm assigning an agent or a lead to do that. So I need to have a separate team that actually works on that and get it implemented so we can move into operations. Workforce management, for us, that's super important. When we get clients, we analyze their patterns, the patterns of arrival for tickets, and we understand, for example, if a client is on retail, we understand that possibly Thanksgiving is going to be a busy weekend for them, and we need to be prepared in terms of volumes of tickets and that type of thing. So workforce management allow us to look at those baselines and those benchmarks and those history that we have from those tickets and get ready to assign the right amount of resources to support that. From a training perspective, we do a couple of different type of trainings. We do the online trainings using very high skill type of systems, and then we do also classroom type of trainings. This is an ongoing activity on our organization because we have SOPs or knowledge bases that change throughout the time, or new ones that present new technologies to be supported, and all of these will require this type of training and documentation. And same with the process and knowledge management. Our technical writers and knowledge management team are on top of understanding changes within our clients to make sure that we keep our documentation updated, and going back to the training, train our agents. Finally, with quality and reporting, that's how we control things. Quality, we look into calls, we look into tickets. We have a different team that is addressing those, measuring those, and going back to their lead supervisors and agents to see what was done wrong and right in order for us to improve how we do services. And same with reporting. We have a lot of reporting that mostly is with BI or business intelligence type of technologies that we put in place just to understand the metrics so we can truly manage a high efficient service desk for our clients.
Yeah.
There is a question from one of the attendees on this slide.
Mm-hmm.
So they're saying one of our challenges implementing innovation and self-service in our service desk is that it's hard sometimes for end users to adopt the new processes. Have you experienced similar challenges? How do you deal with change management and client adoption?
That is a very good question, and it's true. End users, as we all know, they don't like changes. They like to continue doing the same thing. They like to send an email to the service desk. They don't like to go to a portal. But that's why we work very closely with our clients, and we put campaigns. And we do incentives. So people go, or users go to the portal, or they use the chat. So as an example, we have a client and that recently transitioned to our services, and the initial chat adoption was very low. But as we start pushing it, and when users call, agents are telling the user, hey, we also have a chat for next time you can use the chat. We do an advertisement everywhere. So now that has increased probably about 50-60% of usage just within a few weeks after starting. And it's because all the things that we do on our side, as well as the client side, to push end users to use these technologies.
Yeah, it's a big change management effort, but I think it's also a matter of gaining the trust from the users and them seeing the value of these technologies, right? Them seeing that perhaps sending a chat might be quicker, or perhaps going through a self-service portal, there's a lot of information there for them to do it themselves, so they don't have to go through someone else. So it's trying to educate them while also enforcing them that these things are available. So yes, it's not an easy task, but we've definitely seen that there's potential and ability to push users to these type of innovative efforts or tools that are out there.
Yeah, in some cases, I mean, change. I mean, you can, how do you apply the change? You can go through that type of approach, more of soft approach of going with campaigns and directing the users to the resources that are available in the self-help portals or bots. But in other cases that we have dealt in the past, it could be even more radical. It could be like where you can just basically point all the users to the health portal. That's the first point of contact, not even the help desk. And then from there, they do a triage. The bots could be doing the triage, and then there's some automation that will go along with that. And then if in case that they don't really, the bots can solve that, then you basically then transfer to an agent if need be. But there's a lot as when you start looking at the numbers, and I'm sure everyone in this call will agree that there's always a high percentage of tickets that are typically very much the same, right? And in most organizations are the infamous password resets, and those type of things can be highly automated with a bot technology. There's no need for that. In other cases, you have organizations that they may not need to provide a 24/7 support service. So the windows that are not manned or not they don't have a live agent, they provide the self-help technologies to enable the users to interface with the help desk at hours where they don't have those type of resources. So there's multiple ways to go about it, but we actually I will never forget, we had a customer, a very large customer with thousands and thousands of users, and then they went completely from a full agent base to a very much a self-help portal solution for the first point of contact to the help desk. So it was a very interesting thing that they did, and it worked out for the most part. But yeah, those are I think ways to adopt I think these type of technologies.
Yeah. No, definitely. And I think that's why having an organization, right, and having a center of excellence type of organization to help drive a lot of these initiatives, right, to help drive the maintenance of the knowledge base, the retraining of the agents, the opportunities for innovation is so valuable, right? It's a lot harder when you're doing it in-house of who's going to then drive some of these innovation, who's going to push for these initiatives, who's going to go document the processes. It becomes a challenge of, do I do the day-to-day or do I do these things? Typically the day-to-day wins. So that's one of the the great benefits of going with an organization that has something like this that can bring a lot of value to your operation. Let's go to our second polling question, and let's find out from the audience, out of these Center of Excellence functions that we've talked about, do you have any in your operation today, and which ones do you have?
Thank you, Audrey. I have started the polling question, and you can also select more than one option: workforce management, training and quality assurance, knowledge management, reporting, continuous improvement, and innovation. I'll give it a couple of more seconds and I'll share the results with you. All right. So it's funny because, you know, a lot of people selected multiple options. It would be interesting to see how mature do they really have them even when they selected them. But the two most common ones, Adri, are knowledge management and reporting with 67%, followed by training and quality assurance at 50%, continuous improvement and innovation at 50%, and then only 17% of people doing workforce management.
Yeah, no, and definitely workforce management is one of those that, depending on the size of the organization, it starts to become more and more important. The smaller the organizations, it doesn't hold that much value, because if you have a set team and it's working, then there's not that many challenges there. But it's very interesting and refreshing to see that a lot of the companies are seeing the value that knowledge management, right, and knowledge maintenance has in an organization like this. And reporting, of course, is very important. I mean, information, as much information as you can have and as you can provide to your leadership, the more visibility that you have into your operation. So I think it was very refreshing to see those two that are the highest and that have a lot of importance. And of course, the other ones start to become a little bit of that challenge, right? Of how much do I focus my time onto that or not.
I want to add something really quick. The knowledge management is something that we face these discussions with our prospecting clients all the time. Prior to outsourcing, they said we do have knowledge management, but one of the problems is that they don't have focused people to do this, and a lot of these processes are not up to date, they're obsolete, and they're not maintained and missing. So we have all these challenges, and our clients have these challenges. Now, when you have a constant process that, hey, let's review, let's update, let's make sure that we have another team that doing these type of things, you know that the agents or the team is backed up by these good standard processes. So it is interesting that everybody said, or most of the people say knowledge management is one of the biggest things they have, but I know that a lot of the clients that we talk to, that's one of the major challenges too.
Right.
And I'll say in case of reporting, I guess it's something similar, because maybe when you start with a customer, they have reporting, but maybe it's not as sophisticated, or they don't really use it in real time or as frequent to make proactive decisions about those reports and those metrics that they're seeing.
Exactly. And reporting has many meanings, because reporting can be just the total number of tickets or the average speed of answer, that type of thing. At the end, there's a lot of other metrics or things that need to be measured by agent, by technology, the top areas, the top incidents. I mean, you want to be more efficient and more efficient all the time. So you have to be looking at this data in order for you to get better. So yes, reporting is another thing that is a little bit loose, because some people have reporting, but not maybe to the extent to have a high performance service desk.
Just to add to that, I mean, on this topic of reporting, when you look at the technologies, I mean, yeah, you have your service management solution, whatever that may be, and they're typically notorious for having very poor reporting capability. But when you think about the service desk and you have multiple, channels, will, of contacting the help desk, meaning let's say you have your self-help portal and you have your bots and you have your email and your phone, you want to have a way that you can report what's going on in those channels. then you may need, for example, if you have a call, if users are calling, you want to capture the metrics related to the core metrics that you're looking for and that you're dealing with, and then connect those or seeing those with the actual reporting or the data that is coming out of the service management solution. So then you basically end up with kind of like we're not forced to, but pretty much got into the data warehousing world of taking all this data and really using the different type of technologies and be able to make decisions based on what we see from each of those.
To have a complete picture, right? And not have separate pieces of information.
Exactly. Otherwise, you end up, seeing it in multiple slices and not really correlating the data. And that's actually something that somebody may have on their minds of how they do it, but when you put it all together and really have some intelligence around it, is when you get really good value out of that information. And then, but yeah, I mean, it's good to see the knowledge management being a key, and Jose is right on point as far as the way that documentation is updated. Is not typically something that we see very regularly. And then not only being updated, but it's also passing along the information that is being developed by let's say your knowledge management teams or your knowledge management functions into the agents, right? So having that constant flow of training on just not necessarily technologies that they're supporting, but how they're solving issues, and having the different SOPs that they need to be up to speed based on changes that are happening in the company, and having that continuous cycle of disseminating information and knowledge around with the agents is very key to maintain a good service. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was glad to see that the audience found them important, but I agree with you guys that one thing is finding them important, and then another is the maturity, right? Where do you have those functions developed or not? Now let's talk a little bit about some real world examples, real customers, and how these functions that I know sound great in paper, how are they bringing some value, and how are they playing a big role into maturing these operations from where they initially started? So Jose, if you want to go ahead, and we have two different case studies, if you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about them.
I want to start with one on the left, which is this is a global private aviation company. With them, we did a transition, and before we got there, their service desk was mixed with the desktop support. So there was no segregation of duties. Everybody was doing a little bit of everything. There was no specialized type of role, and coverage was an issue. They needed to support all these pilots and resources that are traveling around the world that needed immediate attention. And that was a big challenge for them. So we implemented our service desk, and we were part of their team, basically an extension of their team. We did the level 1. They kept the desktop support, worked closely with us. And by doing that and having the extend hours of operation and support with clear, everybody answering phones or chat or email at any time, that increased the customer sat. Users or the pilots were now happy because now they can get help right away instead of waiting for hours or the next day when somebody was available. Then obviously we focus on innovation. There was a few things that we did in terms of technology or automation for them, but we also use a combination of Auxis tools and client tools. And this is important to know because in a lot of engagements, we bring our tools, which are great, but sometimes the client has some tools that they want to continue to be used. So we adapt to those models and we work hybrid to make sure that we follow business needs. I mentioned about the 24/7, our support, it's nonstop. And as we have people calling from Asia, I can have somebody calling from California at any time, and that's not a problem for us. We continue doing the support and being an extension of their team. And scalability was an important key for them as well. We knew when we had certain volumes of work, for example, Eastern time between like 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. every day, Monday to Friday, it was like an increase of number of tickets. We knew that because of data that we got been collecting. So we increased number of resources during certain shifts, and then we decreased during other shifts. If the client wouldn't have the internal service desk, they wouldn't be able, it would be more difficult for them to manage that based on where the resources were located. But we, as part of our shared services and service desk, were able to do this type of thing and reducing their cost. And that was a big thing as well.
Yeah.
Jose, on the question earlier about how they adopted the self-help portal, I know that was I like that question because it's a very good question. And how do you see the change? They went from they had nothing then to now where they are right now today.
Yeah, so initially they use email, so every ticket was managed by email. But what happens is I send an email and I get probably a ticket back, but that's it. Until I get a call from somebody or an email back, I don't know exactly what the status of my ticket is. Once we start pushing the self-service portal, they saw the advantage that they could go there. They can submit an incident request. There's some boxes for certain areas that will route the tickets with some automation to certain places. And the user understood that with the time. But they can also go to the portal and understand what is the status of their ticket without contacting anybody. So that was a big thing. Then we started doing some automation by pushing some knowledge articles into the portal for things that a user could resolve on their own. Okay, if I need to connect and I have a VPN issue, what should I do? Try this, try that, and that type of thing. That also increased customer sat and decreased the number of tickets. And lastly, we introduced chat, and chat to me is great. I particularly love chat because I can be working and multitask and do chat with an agent, and I can be helping and doing this, and that is a great thing. The other good thing about chat is the authentication. When we do chat, we authenticate the user. So I can even do a password reset through chat, and the agent or the system know it's me. And that will obviously resolve some of the compliance issues that we may run into it with a phone call, for example.
Yeah, and like you said, a lot of these things, they're driving customer satisfaction because they're also driving faster resolution, right? You don't necessarily have to wait for someone to pick up the phone because I can go and look for the article and do it myself. Or I can, like you said, do it through chat while I'm also in a conference call or finishing up an email or something. So yeah, these things are great to see the implementation and the result that they can drive for some of the users, right?
Definitely. And so this shows more about how we created policies and procedures. This is for another client of us. This company, we actually did a separation from their parent company. They got bought by a private equity. So we did the whole separation. When we did that, we have to create the whole infrastructure. Basically, we create a brand new company from an IT perspective from scratch. And we utilize a lot of new technologies, servers on the cloud, all the new technologies from Microsoft. I mean, you name it, the Intune implementation and things that will allow us to operate on a more efficient manner for this type of client. So at the end, we obtain a lot of a very agile type of organization. A lot of the applications were, as I said, SaaS, cloud-based. We have a lot of flexibility, especially because this happened throughout the pandemic, and it was important for the client that was global to be able to support hiring and terminations of users around the globe with the lack of hardware and shipping issues, taxes, importations, I mean, you name it. So we did a lot of the things on a remote way. In some ways, bring your own devices. In some other ways, doing the autopilot imaging with Intune, for example. And those are new technologies that allow us to adapt to the new changes on the world, which the customer really appreciated. And at the end, as Adri said, that improved customer satisfaction as well.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting when we do these type of projects that are spin-offs, that you basically are carving out an organization out of a large company, that you have the opportunity to build something almost from scratch. So you basically put all these true best practices in place, and then you get basically from 0 to 60 in very, very quickly. That creates a lot of efficiency. It creates a lot of great, we've seen it firsthand on the user satisfaction, how they were even, even dealt with even before on these larger companies, so how they're being dealt with today in this kind of model. So I think that's one thing to consider as you look into outsourcing, that where are you in this journey, if you will, because so much you can only do so much as an organization on your own without having the unlimited number of dollars. Of course, with very limited number of dollars, you can only do so much, is my point. And then when you deal with this type of you only get to point B. And I think when you look into this type of opportunities to outsource, you get very quickly into much higher level of maturity that you can possibly do on your own for the same amount of dollars. So that's what we are seeing on when we do these spin-offs, that they basically end up with, they were spending X, they go on and spend the same, but they get a lot more.
It gets accelerated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that is very interesting about these two case studies is that they're global companies, right? They have a global footprint, and when we say global, is Americas, Europe, Asia, all over the world, right? Employees all over the world, sites all over the world, and both of them chose to go to a nearshore location, right? To move their operations to a nearshore location versus perhaps Europe or Asia models. What do you think that is, Alvaro? What do you think they chose? Like, what are some of the benefits you think they saw from a nearshore perspective that made them choose that location?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest one we hear is the strain that having an offshore team in Asia type of thing, when you have US-based operations for the most cases, you put a lot of strain on your management teams to deal with issues that typically end up, you end up putting your resources working almost 24 hours a day. So what they're looking for is something that is closer to home, something that can bring more of the affinity on the culture side of how they're talking to someone that on the other end that they can relate to. So, and then, and then having those resources available, obviously during the times where the business really needs them the most. When you have operations in Europe, also the cost of labor in Europe is obviously pretty high, but at the same time, they're seeing that there's an opportunity to bring to the nearshore is becoming more of an opportunity for them to try something sometimes different than perhaps they even tried before. I mean, we've taken a lot of organizations that have gone from Asia to nearshore, and basically, using their words, is night and day, right? So they see that the resources being a lot more resourceful, being more serviceable. I think the English language is much more improved, so there's much ease of communications with the users, and they really are more personal as far as how they interact with the end users. So
and it almost enables to having more collaboration, right? More real-time collaboration, like you said before, not necessarily working the overnight shift to be able to communicate with your team, but working real-time while they're working into solving an issue or just simply communicating, right?
And I mean, and then some of them, I mean, they know they're going to perhaps increase their cost if they're really dealing with an Asia operation. In some cases, they really don't, but they're looking, they expect a little bit of a bump in the cost of delivering the service, but they're willing to do it. The organization has made a conscious effort to make an investment in improving the services. And one of the things that they do it is not by staying in those type of areas like in Asia or so on, or just really they want to try with Latin America. And I think that's what we're seeing the most is companies that are made that leap from the Asia model to the Latin model, as I call it, with an expectation that they're going to what they're looking for is to increase their service offerings.
There is actually a question, Adri, on this topic. How do you advise clients on whether they should select Costa Rica or Colombia? Any pros and cons that you see with those countries?
I mean, I'm going to say that they're very similar. Honestly, it's a matter of real preference, if the client has any type of preference from our side, we have operations in both countries. The operations run pretty much the same. There's a slight cost differentiation between Colombia and Costa Rica, but from a service perspective, both countries are countries that have a huge services sector with a lot of multinational companies doing business for a long time in these countries. So there's a lot of talent that has already been working with these multinational companies. So from getting the right talent, both companies are the same, from the type of service that we can deliver infrastructure-wise. I mean, they're both pretty similar. So I would say that unless there's a very big driver or a very big preference from the customer, I would say they're pretty similar. I don't know if Alvaro or Jose have something different.
No, and I agree. It should be mostly to us is kind of transparent. Same pool talent. English is excellent. Educational. I mean, time zone. It's about the same. So the in proximity and affinity to the U.S. So to me, I think those qualities are very similar in both countries, and it's kind of transparent to us, to be honest.
Yeah, it's interesting because culturally between the two countries also are pretty similar.
Yeah.
Even in the Latin America region, you got multiple cultures, obviously by country, but it's interesting to see that Colombia and Costa Rica has very similar, close affinity on their culture-wise. So we don't really are seeing those big a big difference as we perhaps see if we were to pick perhaps another country. So, but yeah, I think that's we're seeing pretty much this. I agree with what we were saying here, but
and the other thing that is interesting, you talked about customer service orientation, and I think both Colombians and Costa Ricans are very well known for how friendly they are and how warm they come about, and I think that's also interesting for this specifically.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really love to see is the passion that you get on the resources to actually deliver a good service. They love working for companies that are US-based companies. They love that they see a career path within the organization, because that's another point that I don't know if we touch base too much on that, but basically when you have these type of operations, there is a career path for those resources. They can go from level 1 to level 2 to leads to managers to supervisors or so on. There's a whole process there, but they see that for them the ability to work with multiple companies in the US is actually a sense of pride. There's a sense of pride of doing their job, and I think that's very important to maintain and retain these type of resources and deliver a good service.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, last but not least, Fabi, I don't know if you want to cover this before we open it up completely. I mean, or if anyone has any questions while Fabi covers this, please feel free to enter it in the chat.
Yeah, sure. So one of the questions, and then I'll get into the assessment, was to reconfirm if we actually provide support to Asia and India. I think both examples were global operations examples, but
our support hours we're 24/7, so we provide a lot of support to not in Australia, I mean in Japan, in multiple countries in Asia, but also in Europe as well. So yeah, that's part of our regular operations.
Excellent. So yes, as I was mentioning, one of the things that we're realizing is that a lot of people that are joining the webinar are in the early stages of potentially exploring what help desk could look like. Some of them may be first-time outsourcers. Some of them may have had a bad experience in the past with an Asia company. So one of the things that we have found very valuable for our customers is go through this complementary assessment process, that it's actually very insightful, and it will give you a lot of valuable information for you to be able to make a more thoughtful decision that would really include like a comprehensive assessment of your current operation in terms of really understanding your cost structure, the current productivity of your agents, some of the key challenges that you may be having from a talent management perspective, and gaps that you may be having with the quality of your your existing team and where you would potentially want to place them instead. And based on this analysis, where we also actually look at your call arrival patterns, your tickets, your business requirements, we come up with what outsourcing with Auxis from a nearshore perspective would look like for you. What would be the key benefits that you would really get versus an in-house model? Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it may not make sense, but it's really, insightful, and it would give you a really good perspective of also if there is any potential financial business case, what would it look like, and how we would recommend about implementing it. Because one of the things that we have also realized, help desk outsourcing is a proven model. It's more a matter of how you implement it, and we want to make sure that we have a strong migration approach. So for those of you that may be interested in this, we're leaving you Adriana's contact information and her email here. And also I wanted to mention that if you would like a copy of the presentation, also please email Adri and she will make sure to get you a copy. And all of us are here to respond to any questions that you may have. In case that we didn't have time to respond to some of your questions, we're gonna make sure to contact you individually and try to schedule some time to discuss.
Yeah.
And with that, Adri and Jose Alvaro, I don't know if there's anything else that
I want to thank everyone that joined today, and Jose and Alvaro for participating. I'm hoping that you found the discussion useful, and while we know that there's different drivers for outsourcing, and while you're considering perhaps making this move, there's a lot of benefits that it can bring to your organization, doing it with the right partner, right? And not necessarily just focusing on cost savings, but there's a lot of other benefits that can bring to your organization, from whether it is in the right location, the ability to collaborate, innovation, a lot of things, the talent management, etc. So we're hoping that you found this useful, and thank you for joining us, and until the next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Andy.
Bye.
Thanks, Bobby.